They want me to say I'm sorry. The prison therapist who visits twice a month. The chaplain who quotes scripture about forgiveness. The parole board, 23 years from now, who will expect remorse before they even consider my case. They all want the same thing, for me to break down, to cry, to say I'm a monster who lost his humanity. But I never lost anything. I was exactly what they trained me to be. And for 12 years, that was enough. My name is Daniel Robert Holloway. I'm 41 years old. The media called me the agent, like I was some rogue operative, some outlier in the system. The federal court convicted me of second-degree murder, obstruction of justice, and civil rights violations. 28 years. They said I exceeded my authority, that I used excessive force, that I acted outside protocol. They're wrong about that last part. I followed protocol, right up until the moment I didn't. I need you to understand something from the start. I'm not a sadist. I was evaluated by 3 psychologists during the trial. All said the same thing: emotionally controlled, cognitively functional, no indicators of violent personality disorder. I don't enjoy causing pain. I don't have anger issues. I made a decision. A single, irreversible decision in a moment that lasted maybe 10 seconds. And now I'll spend the next 3 decades paying for those 10 seconds. Let me start where it actually began. Not in that detention facility in Arizona, but in El Paso, Texas, where I was born in 1984. My father was a mechanic, former Army, fixed trucks at a private garage near Fort Bliss. My mother worked registration at the hospital. We weren't poor, but we weren't comfortable either. 3 kids, small house, bills always tight, but we had structure. My father ran the house like he'd run his platoon. Dinner at 6, homework before TV, chores on Saturday, church on Sunday. You didn't argue, you didn't negotiate. You followed the rules and everything worked. He taught me that order prevents chaos, that rules exist for a reason, that authority, whether it's a parent, a teacher, a commanding officer, or a law, deserves respect because without it, everything falls apart. I believed him. I still do. I wasn't a troublemaker. Never got detention. Never did drugs. Graduated high school with decent grades. Went to community college for a year. Studied criminal justice. Dropped out because I couldn't afford to continue and didn't want debt. So I worked. Retail. Warehouse jobs. Security guard at a mall. I was 24, going nowhere, living in a 1-bedroom apartment, watching my friends get married and buy houses, while I scanned badges at a food court entrance. Then I saw the job posting. Federal employment, immigration enforcement, good pay, benefits, pension, stability. I applied, passed the background check, passed the fitness test. Went through 10 weeks of training at the academy in Georgia. They taught us everything: immigration law, detention procedures, use of force protocols. Cultural sensitivity. Yes, they actually had a module on that. How to de-escalate, how to identify threats, how to process detainees efficiently and humanely. Humanely. That word was in the training manual. I graduated in 2010. Got assigned to a facility outside Tucson. Detention and removal operations. My job was intake, processing, supervision, and transport. We handled mostly adults, some families. Occasionally unaccompanied minors, though they usually got transferred quickly. At first, I took it seriously, by the book, every regulation, every procedure. I wanted to be good at it. I wanted to prove I belonged, and I was good at it. Efficient, reliable, no complaints. My supervisors liked me, said I had the right temperament, calm under pressure, didn't overreact, didn't get emotionally involved. That last part is important. They told us not to get emotionally involved. Maintain professional distance, they said. These people are in the system for a reason. Your job is to process them, not to judge them or save them. So I didn't. I processed hundreds of people, thousands over the years. Men, women, children, people who crossed illegally, people who overstayed visas, people fleeing violence, poverty, desperation, people who spoke no English, people who cried, people who begged. I processed them all, took their fingerprints, their photos, their information, assigned them ID numbers, put them in cells, fed them, transported them, deported them. It became routine, like working an assembly line. You stop seeing individuals. You see cases, numbers, tasks to complete. I worked there for 12 years. 12 years of the same thing. Wake up, drive to the facility, put on the uniform, clock in, process, clock out, drive home, sleep, repeat. I didn't have much outside of work, no wife, no girlfriend. A few relationships over the years, but nothing lasted. They'd say I was distant, that I didn't open up, that I was always in work mode. Maybe they were right. Work was the only place I felt like I knew what I was doing. The only place with clear rules, clear expectations. You follow procedure, you do your job, you go home. Until you can't. The job wears on you. Slowly. You don't notice it at first. But after a few years, things start to crack. You hear the same stories over and over. You see the same desperation, the same fear, the same hope that somehow you'll help them, even though you can't. Even though your job is literally the opposite. You develop coping mechanisms, detachment, dark humor, cynicism. You tell yourself these people broke the law, that they knew the risks, that you're just doing your job. And most days, that's enough. But some days, it isn't. By 2020, I'd been doing this for a decade. The facility was overcrowded. We were understaffed. Policy kept changing, depending on which administration was in power. 1 year, we're separating families. Next year, we're not. 1 year, we're releasing people with ankle monitors. Next year, we're detaining everyone. It didn't matter what the policy was. We just followed it. The stress was constant. Detainees frustrated because they'd been waiting months for hearings. Officers frustrated because we were managing triple the capacity we were designed for. Management frustrated because they were getting pressure from Washington. Everyone was angry. All the time. I started drinking more, not during work, never during work, but after. A six-pack became a routine, sometimes more. It helped me sleep, helped me not think about the day. I knew I was burning out. I knew I should take leave, talk to someone, but I didn't. Because admitting you're struggling felt like admitting you couldn't handle the job, and I'd built my entire identity around handling the job. So I kept going. March 2022, a Wednesday, late, shift. We'd just received a new intake group, 30-something people. The usual process, search, document, assign. One of them was a man, mid-30s, Mexican national. Gave his name as Carlos, no last name, no ID, no documentation. Said he'd crossed near Nogales. Said he was trying to get to family in Phoenix. Standard case. We'd processed 1,000 like him. But he was agitated, kept asking questions, asking when he'd see a lawyer, when he'd get a hearing, saying he had rights, that we couldn't hold him without cause. I told him, calmly, professionally, that he'd be processed and assigned a hearing date, that he needed to cooperate, that resistance would only make things harder. He kept pushing, not aggressive, just insistent, wouldn't stop talking, wouldn't follow instructions. Other officers noticed, told me to move him to holding, get him out of the intake area, standard procedure when someone's disruptive. I tried, told him to come with me. He, refused. Started raising his voice. Other detainees were watching. The situation was escalating. I called for backup. 2 other officers came. We gave him another chance to comply. He didn't. So we restrained him. Standard restraint procedure. 1 officer on each arm. I was behind him, controlling his movement. We were walking him toward the holding cells. He was still yelling, saying we had no right, that he hadn't done anything wrong, that he was a human being. And something in me just snapped. I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't rage, it wasn't hatred. It was just this sudden, overwhelming need for him to stop, to shut up, to comply. We were in the corridor, concrete walls, cameras everywhere. The other officers had him by the arms. I had my hand on the back of his neck, standard control hold, and I pushed, harder than I needed to, harder than protocol allowed. His head hit the wall, not at full force, but hard enough. He dropped. The other officers caught him, started asking if he was okay. He wasn't moving. I stepped back, watched them lower him to the floor, watched them check for a pulse. Nothing. One of them looked at me, said, "What did you do?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. I still don't. The medical team came, tried to resuscitate him, called an ambulance. He was transported to the hospital, pronounced dead 2 hours later. Blunt force trauma to the head caused a brain bleed. He'd hit the wall at just the wrong angle, just the wrong spot. 10 seconds, that's how long it took. 10 seconds of pressure, of frustration, of needing control. And a man died. The investigation started immediately. Federal, internal, criminal. They pulled the camera footage, interviewed the other officers, interviewed me. I told them the truth, that he'd been non-compliant, that we'd been following restraint protocol, that I'd applied pressure to move him, that it had gone wrong. They asked if I'd intended to hurt him. I said no. They asked if I'd used excessive force. I said I'd used the force necessary to maintain control. They didn't believe me. The footage didn't support my version. It showed me pushing his head into the wall. It showed him collapsing. It showed me stepping back while he died. I was arrested, charged. The media got hold of it. Federal agent kills detainee. Death in custody. Excessive force caught on camera. My lawyer tried to argue it was an accident, that I'd been following procedure, that the death was unintentional, that 12 years of service with no prior incidents should matter. The prosecution said I'd murdered a restrained, unarmed man, that I'd violated his civil rights, that I'd abused my authority, that I was a symbol of everything wrong with the immigration system. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The other officers testified, said I'd seemed stressed lately, that I'd been more irritable, that they'd noticed but hadn't reported it. The medical examiner testified, said the injury was consistent with significant force, that it wasn't accidental, that it required intent. My lawyer put me on the stand. I testified that I never meant to kill him, that I'd reacted in the moment, that I'd been trained to control non-compliant detainees, that things had escalated faster than I could process. I didn't cry, didn't break down. I answered every question calmly, professionally, the way I'd been trained. The jury saw a man who felt nothing, who showed no remorse. They convicted me, second-degree murder. The judge gave me 28 years, said I'd betrayed the public trust, that I'd used my position to inflict violence on a vulnerable person, that I needed to be held accountable. So here I am. I'm in a high-security federal facility. I don't talk about where. My lawyer says it's safer that way. Other inmates don't like cops. They especially don't like federal agents who killed someone in custody. So I keep to myself. I work in the library, shelve books, process requests. It's quiet, structured. I understand the rules. The other inmates leave me alone. I'm not a threat. I don't cause problems. I follow the routine. The guards treat me like any other inmate, professional, distant. I don't expect anything different. I go to therapy because it's mandatory. The therapist asks how I'm feeling. I say fine. She asks if I think about what happened. I say yes. She asks if I feel remorse. I say I wish it hadn't happened. She writes in her notes, says I'm emotionally guarded, that I deflect accountability, that I need to engage with the reality of my actions. Maybe she's right. I think about him, Carlos, every day. I see his face, hear his voice, feel the moment my hand pushed too hard. I tell myself it was an accident, that I didn't mean to kill him, that I was just doing my job, but I know that's not entirely true. I made a choice. In that moment, I chose control over restraint. I chose to push when I should have stepped back. I chose to assert my authority instead of de-escalating. And he died because of that choice. Do I feel guilty? I don't know. Guilt requires accepting that you did something wrong, and I'm still not sure what the right thing would have been. Should I have let him keep yelling? Let him disrupt the entire intake? Let other detainees think they could refuse orders? That's not how the system works. The system requires compliance, requires authority, requires consequences. I enforced those consequences, and they were fatal. The hardest part of prison isn't the time, it's the questions. Did I kill him because I was burned out? Because I was angry? Because I stopped seeing him as a person? Or did I kill him because the system trained me to prioritize control over humanity? Because 12 years of processing people like inventory made me forget. They weren't? I don't have an answer. What I know is this. I was a federal officer. I had authority. I had training. I had protocols. And in 10 seconds, none of that mattered. I'm not a monster. I'm not evil. I'm not a sadist. I'm a man who spent 12 years doing exactly what I was told, who followed every rule, who believed that structure and order and authority were enough. And then I killed someone. The parole board won't see me for 23 years. When they do, they'll ask if I've changed, if I've learned, if I'm remorseful. I don't know what I'll say, because the truth is, I don't know if I've changed. I don't know if I can. I still believe in rules, in structure, in authority. But I also know that believing in those things cost a man his life. And I'll spend the next 28 years trying to reconcile that. The lights will go out soon, mandatory lights out at 10. I'll lie on my bunk, stare at the ceiling, think about the wall, the sound, the silence after. Every night, the same. Tomorrow I'll wake up, go to the library, shelve books, follow the routine. Because that's all I know how to do. Follow the routine, even when the routine is what destroyed me.